Hey crew, it's Wednesday night when I'm recording this, and Harley Davidson just made a press announcement today that they have shut down production of motorcycles in the US at the York plant and stuff for 2 weeks. And they talk about why. So let's get into that and a little bit of the financial reports from the first quarter of 2022, because I think some of that information I just got out of that financial report.
We continue to deal with the constraints resulting from the global semiconductor shortage.
Is important and can relate to how this is going to affect Harley Davidson. Stock price today dropped to like $31 a share, where just a month ago it was $40 a share. That's a pretty significant dip. A year ago, we were at almost $50 a share. All right, so let's just jump right into it. I'm going to read this announcement to you. Then we're going to talk about the timeline, some of the key words in this announcement, what I think this means for Harley Davidson from a financial impact, and I'm going to take a few guesses at what's going on here because they don't really disclose that. So this press announcement is dated 5/19. Let's get into it. Yesterday, Harley Davidson Inc. took the decision to suspend all vehicle assembly and shipments, excluding LiveWire, for a 2-week period. This decision is taken out of an abundance of caution. It is based on information provided by a third-party supplier to Harley Davidson late on Tuesday, May 17th, concerning a regulatory compliance matter relating to the supplier's component part. Okay, so let's take a look at the timeline. Tuesday night late, they get information concerning a regulatory compliance issue with a component, and Wednesday they meet and they decide to shut down production for 2 weeks, and then they announced it today on Thursday. So that's all moving pretty quick. That means there's probably not a concern. There is probably an issue. I mean, it's not, it says an abundance of caution based on information that's provided relating to a component part, and it's a compliance matter. Now, I don't know. I mean, I'm not in the automotive production industry, but this kind of compliance thing and an abundance of caution and everything else, this sounds like a safety issue to me. I mean, it could be something related to emissions and they have to meet certain requirements there. So besides emissions and safety, I really don't see what else it would that would drive them to shut down for 2 weeks that fast. But I'm just taking a guess here. The thing that strikes me first out of this, before we talk about and guess what might be the issues, is the fact that they're shutting down for 2 weeks. If you think that's not a small thing, that's a pretty significant thing. I mean, Harley Davidson has, in their first quarter earnings call, they just talked about the supply chain issues. A few months ago, I think end of the year call, they were predicting that the supply chain issue was going to ease up and things were going to get better in late 2022, in the second half of 2022. In this last call, they came out and said that they revised that. They believe the inflation and the supply chain issues are going to last through the entirety of 2022. I kind of got the impression, even though they didn't say it, that they might be worse than they'd originally anticipated for 2022. Some of the inflation, different things like that are affecting the financial loans. They talked about supply chain issues with semiconductors affecting the ability to produce touring models, which is their biggest profit margin. So their mix wasn't as profitable in the first quarter. They also talked about that Harley Davidsons are on the average on a dealer floor for 10 days right now before they're sold. I was told, and I don't know if this is true, but they usually get bikes once a month. So 10 days is pretty short. I mean, it's quite possible that, they get a shipment of bikes and the average is 10 days, that by the time the next shipment is due, they're going to be low on inventory. I'm not going to say what dealership, but I was at a pretty large dealership and they had very few new bikes. The reservation system was supposed to allow Harley Davidson to predict demand for high volume models and to be able to better keep up with production on the high demand models and keep more bikes on the floor this year than they were able to last year. And that is not the result they're seeing. They're not seeing more bikes on the floor. They're not seeing more bikes available than there was last year. In fact, they're seeing less from a standpoint on inventory. Maybe sales is better. The demand is still high. The fact is, it just means it's going to be more demand, less supply means more higher prices for the rest of us. So my big concern with that whole scenario is now we take 2 weeks of production time away. That's about 5% of their production time a year. So unless they make that time up, that's going to reduce the inventory supply by 5%. They have 5% less time to produce models. I think that's going to make the situation with the supply and demand even worse unless they ramp up and they can make that 2 weeks up when they come back. If anybody works for Harley Davidson and you can fill us in on if that's possible or not possible or how that'll work, I'd love to hear from you in the comments down below. Let's talk about why they shut down for 2 weeks. An abundance of caution. Regulatory compliance issue with a component part. Now, that can mean a lot of things. It could be emissions, it could be safety related. And my gut just tells me it's safety related based on this abundance of caution and that. So let's talk about what kind of safety issues would be most likely to drive production to a stop. Now, I've been seeing a lot of posts on Facebook talking about a certain brand of tire having a lot of cracks in it just right after break-in, even though the tire is basically new still, but there's a whole bunch of cracks throughout the solid area of the tire where there shouldn't be cracks, things like that. I know certain brands of tires are extremely hard to get right now. I know the dealers are having problems getting tires. I know my local independent shop is having problems getting certain brands of tires. I had to go with a different brand back tire this time than what I normally run on the front because that's all they had. It's all you could get. So take it or leave it. So maybe it's got to do with quality control or shortage in supply of tires or rubber. Speaking of rubber, what else is common to every motorcycle that would require them to shut down production? They shut down production of all motorcycles except for Livewire. So what is a common component to all these models that, they would all use the same component on probably, or the same manufacturer, the same supplier? Belts. They're all belt driven. So it could be a problem with drive belts, the Gates belts. It could be something like ECM or fuel injectors if they use the same one in all the models. But brakes could be an issue, but would it be, we don't use the same brakes for every single model, so I wouldn't think they would shut down, every model, but maybe that's possible. Now, it could be a component like brake fluid or something like that could be a problem, and they probably use the same fluid in every single model. Could be a electronic parts supplier that's related to safety, like if they all use Bosch for their anti-lock brake system or something, maybe Bosch has a problem, something like that. What else would drive that down? What common component is kind of across all lines except for the Livewire that would drive this kind of shutdown? You guys, the collective mind out there probably knows more than I do. So leave me a comment. Give me your suggestion. What do you think it is? Let's all take a guess at it. Yeah, it's just a guess, but it'd be interesting to see. Hopefully something will surface explaining what this shutdown is about. All right, guys, I'm done speculating. That's fun, but the fact is we won't know unless Harley Davidson decides to tell us, or there's some kind of recall or something else. Hopefully that information will come out soon. If you guys like the video, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. You guys stay safe and keep on riding. We'll see you in the next one.